One way of looking at this might be that for 42 years, I've been making small, regular deposits in this bank of experience, education, and training. And on January 15th, the balance was sufficient that I could make a sudden large withdrawal.
Captain Chesley Sullenberger is uncharacteristically worried that experience for airline pilots, there may someday be a significant shortage.
I don't know a single professional pilot who would recommend that their children follow in their footsteps.
Come fly with me.
There was a time when the job of airline pilot was a coveted one, glamorous, respected, with plenty of benefits. But now,
the airline employees have been hit by an economic tsunami. Pay cuts, loss of pensions, increased hours every day. It's a heavy burden.
And last year alone, more than 6,000 of the roughly 90,000 commercial pilots were either furloughed or permanently laid off. What effect do you think that is having on the industry itself and on the people it's attracting?
I know some of our pilots who have been laid off have chosen not to return. I can speak personally for me and my family that my decision to remain in this profession I love has come at a cost for me and my family.
Sullenberger says 5 years ago, he and his fellow pilots at U.S. Airways gave back almost $6.8 billion in pensions, wages, and other concessions to keep the airline flying. And while annual salaries can average anywhere from $37,000 for a first officer and well into the six figures for a captain, the shrinking workforce means pilots are often spread very thin.
20 years ago, the average airline pilot would maybe work 70 to 80 hours about 3 times a month. Now that same pilot's working 70 to 80 hours every week.
It started with deregulation in 1978. The onset of low-cost carriers really started to put stress on the system. Then you couple that with 9/11, the spike in fuel costs, you've really got the prescription for a very challenged industry.
The majority of pilots hired today are civilians coming out of flight school who began their careers at smaller airlines. And few have the military background Sullenberger had flying for the Air Force. In 1992, roughly 90% of those hired by major carriers had flown for the military. By last year, fewer than 30%.
I think that there will always be people who want to do this. It just may not be the same people who are doing it now.
Are you concerned that that means that if another situation like this one comes up in the future, you won't have as qualified a pilot flying the plane?
That just follows, doesn't it?
But despite the harsh economic realities, for the first time in jet aviation history, U.S. commercial carriers have gone 2 consecutive years without a crash fatality. When contacted about Captain Sullenberger's concerns, the Air Transport Association, which represents the principal U.S. carriers, had no comment.
The crew of U.S. Airways.
The story of Flight 1549 has been a boost to the country, but it's also given those who work in the struggling airline industry a shot in the arm.
Probably the most important words I've heard have been from my peers. They tell me that I have made them proud, that they feel pride in themselves, a pride in the profession they haven't felt for years, sometimes decades. And they also tell me that they were glad that I was the one flying that flight that day.